Got to read between the lines. Got to read between the lines.
Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of What's Going On. I'm your host, Tom D'Ambra. As always, we are very thankful you took the time from your busy day to join us today. My friends, today we are going to be presenting some more information with regards to what the Founding Fathers, what were their motivations for writing the Second Amendment. I know 3 weeks ago we got into the understanding of what the militia is. And we determined this from the language of the founding documents, that the militia was every able-bodied man from the age of 16 to 60. That was what the militia was. The militia was not the National Guard, which didn't exist then. And what was the state? The state was the people and the geographical territory thereof. The state was not the corporation that we have today, because if you've been watching this program, you understand that the United States federal government and the subservient states to it became a corporation with the Organic Act of 1871. And we have read that act numerous times on this program, but if you haven't seen these particular programs and you think this just can't be, I invite you to go on the internet and punch in the Organic Act of 1871 when the United States became a corporation. And my friends, if you go to Black's Law Dictionary and you look up United States or USA or whatever acronym you want to use for it, you will find out there's 3 definitions of the United States. There is one, the geographical territory of it. The other one is the union that is formed by the state. And the other is, yes, a corporation. So there are 3 definitions of what the United States is, and you have to be particular when you're communicating with these authorities exactly what United States are they representing and addressing and contracting with you as. So before we get into our main subject matter today, I thought it would be interesting to just read up some little bit of news that you may have missed. Some of this was not carried in the mainstream media. A lot of this information I'm about to present to you actually came from European sources. But before we started that, I thought I would read to you once again Taylor Caldwell's statement from 1952. And this is really interesting, and I know I have said this before, but it just keeps hitting home to me as to where we are today and where we need to go. And again, this is Taylor Caldwell from 1952. And the book is called The Devil's Advocate, and this is from page 332. On the day when you again allow abdominal men to confiscate your freedom, your money, your lives, your private property, your manhood, and your sacred honor, in the name of security or national emergency, you will die, and never again shall you be free. If plotters again destroy your republic, they will do it by your greedy and ignorant assent, by your disregard of your neighbor's rights, by your apathy and your stupidity. We were brought to the brink of universal death and darkness because we had become the most contemptible of people, an angerless one. Keep alive and vivid all your righteous anger against traitors, against those who would abrogate your Constitution, against those who would lead you to wars with false slogans and cunning appeals. I just had to read that again, my friends, because I find that so right on the mark with where we are today. And he provides not only the warnings of where we are, because we really have no freedoms. You can't think of anything that you do without having to pay and or get permission from the government. You cannot build a house for yourself. You cannot go work for yourself. You cannot buy clothes. You cannot buy fuel. You cannot buy food for yourself without paying them. And you can't open up any of the businesses that supplement the necessities of our society without getting permission from them and paying them. You are not free. You have no money. He talks about, men to confiscate your money. We have no money. We know this from watching this program. Money does not encompass debt. Our Federal Reserve notes are exactly that. They are a note. They are, and if you look up the word note in Black's Law Dictionary, it is an acknowledgement of debt. And that's why, my friends, there are two signatures on that instrument. One is the creditor, one is the debtor. Your lives, your private property. If you think you own your property, you just go ahead and don't pay your property extortion taxes for 2 years, and you're going to see who really owns your property. Now, we have gone through this on our program. In the United States at one time, there was a document known as allodial title. And allodial title, in Latin, allodial means absolute. In other words, you owned it. It was yours, absolute. Okay, there was no liens, there was no subjections to it. You were not subservient to anybody regarding this land. You own the land. Well, now you merely have certificate of title because the true owner is issuing you a certificate. And remember when we looked up the word certificate in our dictionary? It meant that, number one, it was a negotiable instrument, meaning it held value. And number two, it meant bearer use of. Someone is allowing you to use something of value. So this is the reason why, my friends, we are either, and please get your own documents out. Go retrieve your deeds. You are either a tenant, a joint tenant, or a tenant in common. But you are not the owner. The Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, is the owner. We have read Senate Document 93-549 to you in verbatim many a times, and found the clause that literally turned the owner's property rights and ownership in this country over to the state, to use the word that is in the document. All ownership is subordinate to the needs and necessities of the state. And this is how they got New London versus Kelo. Do you remember that very upsetting and famous, or I should say infamous case, where the Supreme Court said that the the corporation of New London had the right to tear down these people's houses along the waterfront for the right to develop it for higher tax revenue? You think you own your land when they can come in for higher revenue and throw you out, destroy your life, destroy your property for the benefit of their purse strings? Excuse me. And then you have this supposed Supreme Court that swears an oath to the Constitution? Then we have to ask ourselves, which Constitution are they swearing an oath to? And if you're watching this program, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There are two constitutions. Excuse me. Your manhood and your sacred honor in the name of security or national emergency. My friends, one of the things that literally disgusts me about Americans is we are cowards. As a people, we have lost our right to think for ourselves, to obtain critical thinking and come to our own conclusions. And we have lost our manhood. We have lost our desire. We have lost our abilities to act upon the conclusions of that critical thinking because we are cowards as a people. If the plotters again destroy a republic, they will do it by your greedy and ignorant assent, by your disregard for your neighbor's rights, and by your apathy and your stupidity. I could not agree more. Could not agree more. Okay, now let's see if we can get a little bit of sad humor here. This is something that was sent to me by a fellow patriot named Lynn last week, and I thought it was rather interesting, and you had to chuckle at it, but it was also very effective in how we are. And the title of this is America Designed by Geniuses, Now Run by Idiots. You know you live in a country run by idiots if you can get arrested for expired tags on your car, but not for being in the country illegally. You know if you live in a country run by idiots if you have to have your parents' signature to go on a school field trip, but not to get an abortion. You know you live in a country run by idiots if an 80-year-old woman can be strip searched by a TSA, but a Muslim woman in a burqa is only subject to having her neck and head searched. You know you live in a country run by idiots if your government believes the best way to eradicate trillions of dollars of debt is to spend trillions more of your money. You know you live in a country run by idiots if a 7-year-old boy can be thrown out of school for calling his teacher cute, but hosting a sexual exploitation or diversity class in grade school is demanded. You know you live in a country run by idiots if the Supreme Court of the United States can rule the lower courts cannot display the Ten Commandments in their courtroom while sitting in front of a display of the Ten Commandments. You know you live in a country run by idiots if children are forcibly removed from their parents who appropriately discipline them while children of underprivileged drug addicts are left to rot in filth-infested cesspools of a home. You know you live in a country run by idiots if hard work and success are rewarded with higher taxes and government intrusion, while some sloth, lazy behavior is rewarded with EBT cards and WIC checks, Medicaid, subsidized housing, and a free cell phone. You know you live in a country run by idiots if work is provided 99 weeks of unemployment checks. In other words, what they're saying here, my friends, is we're paying for 99 weeks, it keeps growing, and the unemployment checks not to work. Although I will say with that remark that the checks that these people are getting, they're just getting their money back. They're just getting their funds back. They've been paying into this system for many, many years. All they're doing is getting their funds back. You know you live in a country run by idiots if being self-sufficient is considered to be a threat to the government. You know you live in a country run by idiots if politicians think that stripping away your amendments to the Constitution is really protecting the rights of the people. You know you live in a country run by idiots if the rights of the government come before the rights of the individual. You know you live in a country run by idiots if you pay your mortgage faithfully, denying your newest big screen TV while your neighbor defaults on his mortgage while buying iPhones, TVs, and cars, and the government forgives his debt and reduces his mortgage with your tax dollars. You know you live in a country run by idiots if being stripped of the ability to defend yourself makes you safe. You know you live in a country run by idiots. You can write I'm not going to go on, folks. Let's just stop with that. I don't want to spend too much time on that. I thought some of it was humorous, but I also thought a lot of it hit home. So as I told you before, I was going to be, I'm still researching the thousands of pages of the new fiscal cliff legislation. And as I told you before, for every $1 of cuts, there is $41 of tax increase. And that's remained true so far. The other thing a couple of things that I have discovered, number one, is that a lot of these cuts were their projection cuts. And if you remember, I said to you when we discussed this about 4 or 5 shows ago that the government, in its own legislation since the 90s, is automatically, their budget is automatically raised by 7%. Now we're talking trillions of dollars here. Trillions and trillions of dollars. So I should say Federal Reserve notes, because we don't have dollars anymore. A dollar is a 25.8 grains of gold and a 51 ratio of silver. We do not have dollars anymore. We have Federal Reserve notes. So this budget is raised automatically 7% every year, and we're talking trillions of dollars. So when they talk about cuts, they are not talking about starting where we were yesteryear and reducing that for the future. They are talking about their projections. Their projections. My friends, it's still going up. and we still have to pay these foreign bankers an interest bond on every one of these Federal Reserve notes because they gave us permission to print it. Now, one of the things I found out with this bill, this legislation, is that President Obama wants to eliminate the Small Business Association so we can save $3 billion a year. Of course, President Obama has not had one meeting yet with his Jobs Committee, but he figures because there is a war being waged against the middle class and particularly small business, which makes up a tremendous portion of the actual employment in this country, that he can save a lousy $3 billion by cutting the SBA. But when you read further, you see that President Obama has raised foreign aid by $9 billion on Federal Reserve notes. So I want you to think about that. We're talking about a man who has not met with his jobs council once, admittedly, because we're also talking about a man who visited 57 states of the Union and had one more to go. But we're talking this here now, folks. This guy is shutting down the SBA, Small Business Association, to the tune of $3 billion savings, but he is increasing foreign aid by $9 billion. Just to transfer wealth, and not to you and I. Food stamps. You'd be very happy to know that when President Obama took office, there was 25 million people on food stamps. Currently, my friends, there are 49 million people on food stamps. So much for that economic recovery they've been screaming about. Okay, another thing you may not have heard about in the mainstream media, this comes from Europe also. Senator Reid says bribery allegations not true. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, who, by the way, my friends, if you look at his re-election campaign, was just froth and fraud, I'll say. But we've already got into show on that, but I will tell you that this person is an insider. This person has been to Bilderberg meetings. This person is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. This person is an insider. They protect this man. Remember the Just Us system? Okay, headline. Reid says bribery allegations not true. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid was never involved in an alleged effort to help derail a federal investigation into Utah resident Jeremy Johnson's business, his office stated Sunday, dismissing Johnson's claims that he paid money he believed was meant to bribe the Nevada Democrat. Now, you see how they like to throw in the word believed? Wait till you hear the amount of money we're talking. I think you would understand that this person not believed, this person had arrangements made. Senator Reid has no knowledge or involvement regarding Mr. Johnson's case, his spokeswoman Kristen Othman said in a statement. These unsubstantiated allegations implying Senator Reid's involvement are nothing more than innuendo and simply not true. Reid's denial marks the first time that his office has responded to Johnson's accusations since the St. George businessman alleged that Utah's new Attorney General John Swallow helped set up a $600,000 payment intended to enlist Reid to thwart a Federal Trade Commission investigation into Johnson's iWorks company. Swallow has adamantly denied playing a role in any such arrangement and said he merely put Johnson in contact with Richard Rawl, the late owner of the Provo-based Czech City payday chain. Rawl agreed to hire lobbyists to weigh in with the FTC, Rawl said in an affidavit just prior to his death. Unbelievable. My friends, when you read this investigation, of course, you would think this would be on CNN and all the rest of the mainstream media. And it took Mr. Reid's office well over a month to even come forth with these allegations. And the only reason why they did was because they were forced by the hand of the foreign press. And then the local papers got a hold of it, which you would think it would have been picked up by AP and UPI. It didn't. It stayed right there. And basically so you got a new attorney general who was involved. He made the connections. And then Mr. Swallow says, I had nothing to do with this or make any such arrangement. He merely put Johnson in contact with Richard Rall, the late owner of the Provo-based Czech City chain. But he had nothing to do with it. Nothing at all. And Mr. Reed's office had nothing to do with this. And it just happens to be that Mr. Rall, once he gave an affidavit about this with emails, with phone conversations, with documentation of money being transferred to the tune of $600,000, he just happened to die. Unbelievable. What a coincidence. This man just happened to die after he gave an affidavit acknowledging with hard evidence that Mr. Reed's office was in contact with Mr. Rall through the new Attorney General, John Swallow, representing Mr. Johnson, who was being investigated, his company, Johnson's Ironworks, being investigated by the Federal Trade Commission. Just happened to die. Folks, look at these people when they go into office. Yes, a lot of them are well-to-do. They're crooks. Barbara Feinstein right now, or Feinstein, however you want to say it, she is worth millions and millions of dollars. How did she get this way on a lousy $144,000 a year? Inside trading, which they were busted on. Of course, they were relieved. They actually passed legislation protecting themselves. We covered that a couple of years ago. Unbelievable. And not a word of it from the sources that you're getting your information from, because it's the just us system. Not justice, just us. Okay. This again is from Europe. Spending to increase 55% under Obama's plan. Spending will increase 55% if President Obama's budget plan goes into effect. This was a report taken from the Senate Budget Committee, which notes that Obama's proposal would spend $880 billion, Federal Reserve notes, more over an already projected increases. There we go again, my friends. Projected. This whole thing is a dog and pony show. Projected. They're not cutting anything. The debt is growing. The budgeting monster is growing. Spending will increase 55%, and this article was taken, all the information was taken from the Senate Budget Committee. The president's last fiscal cliff offer once again increases spending rather than reducing it. Well, I think I told you that. I think I told you from what I have read so far, for every $1 of projected cuts, there is $41 of actual tax increase. Here is a very, very sad thing, my friends. Today is the 40th anniversary. This was actually written last week. Today is the 40th anniversary of the Supreme Court ruling on Roe versus Wade. In that document, we find that this nation, through your tax dollars, has murdered millions of babies to the tune of 54,559,615 babies since 1973. That number means that 3,300 abortions are performed daily, and if you want to break it down, 137 abortions are performed every hour in these United States. Translated into another way, my friends, the murder of children is done about every 30 seconds here in the United States. I don't want to talk too much about that. It just disgusts me. And if you don't think that there is some payback coming to a nation that murders innocent life through law and through funding, the loss of morality in this country is incredible. The very fabric of our society is deteriorating away. And what do you think is going to happen when this whole thing collapses? A society that will murder innocent life like that has no understanding of morality. And I will going to stop on that before I get emotional. Okay, let's go on to some other news you may not have heard. Nobel Prize, Peace Prize winner, nominee, I should say, excuse me. My friends, what took me to this is I was doing some research last week because I have been noticing that a lot of top military, career military people have been either resigning or being let go by the Obama administration. The most recent one that caught my attention was the Commandant of the Marine Corps. Some of you know I have spoken to it before on this program. I spent some time in the Marine Corps. And I sort of keep up on events of the Marine Corps of all my brothers and sisters that are in the Corps. And I will tell you that I found it rather interesting that the Commandant of the Marine Corps was released the way he was because he was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, which most of them are now. And so I got to do some more research on this. And I remember when Admiral Fallon, who was in charge of all the forces in the Middle Eastern theater, he resigned, and I remember we presented this to the program a couple of years ago. He resigned because Dick Cheney wanted to use Navy SEALs to attack. Now, this is in the New York Times. You can even go to the mainstream media for this one. Dick Cheney wanted to attack the naval forces using Navy SEAls in the Persian Gulf, particularly off the Strait of Hormuz, so he could blame it on Iran. And Admiral Fallon was adamant that he would not use U.S. forces to attack U.S. forces, all for the pretense of war. So he resigned. So it sort of makes you think Operation Northwoods, which we have read verbatim to you years ago, where the United States government, Joint Chief of Staff, LL Minister, signed it off. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara signed it off. They brought it to the President Kennedy. President Kennedy said, "You people are out of your minds." And he walked to the Pentagon and personally fired LL Minister and relieved him right there. But what they were going to do with Operation Northwoods, if you weren't watching the program back then, and you can go on the internet, my friends, it's there. They were going to blow up, they were going to foment riots in Miami and in Washington, D.C. and blame it on Cuba. They were going to kill the Marines and sailors at Guantanamo. To us Marines and sailors, we know it as Gitmo, the Guantanamo base down in Cuba. They were going to blow up ships at the base. They were also going to use their own language, they were going to shoot down a plane load of college students away on holiday. They actually had aircraft from Elgin Air Force Base. The CIA did that. They were going to dress up as with Cuban symbols, so that people would think when because they were going to have open channel communications, everybody could hear it. They were going to be attacked by Cuban aircraft, and they were going to shoot down this plane full, to use their own words, college students away on holiday, and they were going to have mock funerals and all these things they were going to do so they could get the people to go to accept a war with Cuba. So that brings me back to what I started doing research on, all these military leaders that are either resigning or they're walking away. Well, this is an interesting headline, and this comes from the website InfoWars, written by a gentleman by the name of Paul Joseph Watson. Nobel Peace Prize nominee. This is his quote. Obama asked military leaders if they will fire on U.S. citizens. 2009 Peace Prize nominee Jim Garrow shockingly claims he was told by a top military veteran that the Obama administration's litmus test for new military leaders is whether or not they will obey an order to fire on U.S. citizens. Garrow was nominated 3 years ago for the prestigious Nobel Peace Prize and is the founder of Pink Pagoda Girls, an organization dedicated to rescuing baby girls from genocide in China. Garrow has been personally involved in helping rescue more than 36,000 Chinese baby girls from death. He is a public figure and a voice on the internet, which makes his claim all the more disturbing. I have been informed by former senior military leaders that Obama is using a new litmus test in determining who will stay and who must go in his military leaders. Get ready to explode, he says. The new litmus test of leadership in the military is if they will fire on U.S. citizens or not. Those who will not are being removed. Now, my friends, do you remember the 29 Palms survey from 1999, I want to say? And if you don't, please look it up. They took the Marine Corps and they took Special Forces in the Army and Navy, and they did a survey with them. They presented them different scenarios, and they always asked them, would they fire on American citizens? Okay. Concerns over U.S. troops being given orders to fire on American citizens in the event of mass gun confiscation. I'm sorry, I said 98. Here, he quotes it here, I'm sorry. Mass gun confiscation arose in 1995 when hundreds of Marines and Special Forces at 29 Palms, California, to those of you in the Marine Corps, we call that the stumps, were given a survey as part of an academic project by Navy Lieutenant Commander Ernest Guy Cunningham, which asked the Marines and Special Forces if they would, and I quote to you, my friends, fire upon U.S. citizens who refuse or resist confiscation of firearms banned by the United States government. My friends, this has been planned for decades. They just had to form it and come up with the proper events for you to accept it. Remember the Hegelian dialectic. Crisis, reaction, solution. Create a crisis. Get the emotional response you want from the people and bring in the solution which always strengthens their authority, and you will give up your rights too. Unbelievable. The military has clearly outlined numerous civil emergency scenarios under which troops will be authorized to fire on U.S. citizens. Now, if you don't believe me with that, I did some more research. You can go to the U.S. Army Military Police Training Manual, Civil Disturbance Operations, dating from 2006. An updated manual released in 2010 entitled FM. Now, please, go look this up. We have already read to you verbatim from this on many occasions. FM 3-39.40, Internment and Resettlement Operations, to help local and state authorities to restore and maintain law and order in the event of mass riot, civil unrest, or a declaration of emergency or martial law. On page 20 of the manual, rules regarding the use of deadly force in confronting dissidents. This is the same corporation, my friends, that wants to take your guns away from you. This is just more of the same. This is just another, this is Jim Garrow speaking himself, which I have already just read to you verbatim. And this was dated this January of 2013. And again, he is using the word litmus test. Just incredible. I found this article very well done. Former OMB, that's the Office of Management and Budget, boss Dave Stockman has told CNBC basically that the Federal Reserve continues to run our economy. He was the only one of a kind that had it right about the Fed. The Fed is the heart of the problem. We have destroyed the capital markets, the money markets. Interest rates mean nothing. Everything is trading off to the Fed. Wall Street isn't even a home. It's a bunch of computers trading word clouds emitted by this central bank. Oh boy, it brings you back to Louis T. McFadden, and I made a little note here. The money vultures who control. Remember, that's what he called the Federal Reserve? The money vultures. Okay, so we have some time left here. I want to get into a little bit about the guns. Here we have a corporation that is bankrupt, answering to foreign creditors, known as the Federal Reserve Bank. Now, this corporation on March 9th, 1933, through an amendment with the Trading with the Enemies Act of 1917, declared the people of these United States and those under the jurisdiction thereof the enemy. We have read this to you, I have got to think, at least 10 times, verbatim from the act. And I'm just going to be real brief about this. What they did, my friends, was there was a document from 1917 called the Trading with the Enemies Act. And it had to do a lot with what they could do about people trading with the enemy, which, by the way, still goes on every day, which, by the way, is going on today. It went on during Vietnam. It went on during Korea. It went on during World War II. Do you remember we spoke about Saucony, Standard Oil Company of New York, which you know as Mobil, and Texaco, how they basically was supplementing the fuel for the V-2 rockets to hit London because the Germans could not facilitate the fuel. So we were supplying the fuel to the Germans, the German army, or actually I should say the Air Corps, to fire these rockets on the civilian people of England. Do you remember how we read to you verbatim and how the Brown Brothers Harriman Union Bank of New York was confiscated in 1943 because it was discovered that they financed the Nazi movement or Hitler in Germany? And it was also discovered that the fund manager between the Brown Brothers Union Bank of New York and the Reich Bank of Germany was none other than Prescott Bush, the grandfather of George W., the father of Herbert Walker, George Herbert Walker Bush. Incredible. So when the corporation that you know as the United States government went insolvent and the bankers took over the strings of every mechanism of this corporation you know as the government, which you think is this lovely, benevolent organization, in 1933, they amended from the 1917 Trading with the Enemies Act into the 1933 Trading with the Enemies Act. They amended, the change that took place was the definition of enemy. And again, we have read this to you verbatim at least 10 times, where the definition of enemy was the people living in the United States and under the jurisdiction thereof. You were declared the enemy by these foreign banks who control this insolvent corporation that you know as the United States government. So, these people have not only declared you the enemy, now they are trying to take your guns from crises that I firmly believe were developed by them. And we're going to be doing a special report on Sandy Hook. And again, I invite you to go to the internet and I invite you to go to YouTube and punch in Sandy Hook, and you will see this documentary. There's been over 10 million people have viewed this in a very short time. And you are going to see things that we already know, that I've already talked about in this program. The nurse, Sally Cox, not a registered nurse in the state of Connecticut. The Crisis Actors Guild, involved with the interviews from the supposed parents. One of the girls that was supposedly shot is taking pictures with President Obama mistakenly after the event, because President Obama had to prop them up. See, we want the emotional response. Nothing tugs the emotional response, my friends, like harm coming to children. If we can still get a response out of the American people, nothing does it better than harm to children. It's just like the Murrah building in Oklahoma. They contacted all the ATF, all the IRS agencies, employees that were there at the Murrah building in Oklahoma, told them do not come into work till 11 o'clock at night. This is in court records. I am not making this up. This is in court records. Go to Representative Charles Key's grand jury, you will see this. But they let everybody else come in there, and they certainly opened up the daycare center. Why? So they could get the emotional response from you that they wanted. And we all know by now that Timothy McVeigh did not blow up the Murrah building. How did Timothy McVeigh get 2 unexploded devices into that building? Okay, so now this corporation, again, that is being controlled by a foreign private bank that is bleeding the world and our nation for that matter, who is having a litmus test multiple times over decades to find leaders that will order their troops to shoot on you, is trying to disarm you through crisis that they created. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. What is the militia? Every able-bodied man 16 to 60. We went over that last week. I have some quick quotes for you. You know, and I thought about this quote, my friends, after I read to you the millions and millions of people that were killed by their governments after being disarmed. If you remember, the total number of people that died at the hands of government in the 20th century were 290 million. One death is a tragedy. 1 million is a statistic. Joseph Stalin. And what he means by that is we lose the grasp, the horrific event of this broad numbers. If guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. The Constitution shall never be construed to authorize Congress to prevent the people of these United States, who are peaceable citizens, from keeping their own arms. Samuel Adams. Who are the militia? Are they not ourselves? It is fair then that we shall turn arms, each man against his own bosom. Congress have no power to disarm the militia. Their swords and every other terrible implement of the soldier are the birthright of being an American. Tench Coxe, 1788. The Constitution preserves the advantage of being armed which Americans possess over the people of almost every other nation, where the governments are afraid to trust the people with arms. That was from James Madison, the Federalist, number 46. Ideas are more powerful than guns. We would not let our enemies have guns. Why should we let them have ideas? Joseph Stalin. By the way, my friends, as we talked about, we put him in power. In earlier times, it was easy to control 1 million people than to physically kill 1 million people today. It is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than it is to control 1 million people. Zbigniew Brzezinski. And you may wonder who Zbigniew Brzezinski is. Big member of the Trilateralist Commission, one of the founders actually with the Rockefeller, also a Bilderberg meeting member, and also, as President Obama called him, his guide. This man, this is who Obama is actually taking his marching orders from. Death solves all problems. No man, no problem. Joseph Stalin. Education is a weapon whose effects depend on who holds it in his hands and at whom it is aimed. Joseph Stalin. The only real power comes out of a long rifle. Joseph Stalin. The best way we can hope for concerning the people at large is that they be properly armed. Alexander Hamilton, the Federalist Papers. Those now possessing weapons and ammunition are at once to turn them over to the local police authority. Firearms and ammunition found in possession will be forfeited to the government without compensation. Whoever willfully or neglectingly violates the provisions will be punished with an imprisonment and a fine. Nazi law, possession of weapons, 1938. Arms discourage and keep the invader and plunder in awe, and preserve order in the world as well as property. Horrid mischief will ensure where law-abiding citizens are deprived of the use of them. Thomas Paine. It is the duty of the patriot to protect his country from its government. Thomas Paine. And you know, my friends, if I could stipulate on this a little bit more, a lot of Americans are misguided in the sense that they think being a patriot, being a good American citizen, is having an allegiance to the government. Oh, that is so far from the truth. Being a patriot and being a good American citizen is having allegiance to the highest law of the land, which is the Constitution, the organic Constitution. Not the second one, the first one. The Constitution for the small u United States. The supreme law of the land. That is where your allegiance is. When we took an oath, all you veterans out there in law enforcement and so forth, you took or political people, you took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. You didn't take an oath to the government of the United States, to the president, to the governor. You took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Understand that. That's what a citizen is. Being a citizen takes vigilance. It takes desire of freedom and the ideals that so many people have sacrificed for with their life, with their limb. There's not one person out there whose ancestry has not sacrificed either with blood or sweat equity, protecting the Constitution of the United States. And now our Constitution is under assault, and it has been for decades, and we have done nothing about it, and now we find ourselves with a fiat money system controlled by a foreign bank, and we are about to be disarmed in a blossoming domestic security force. FEMA camps are set up. You remember John Ashcroft called them internment camps. He spoke about them plenty on the public format. Look up the word interment, to bury, to rid of. This is where we are. Understand the duties of being a citizen and your allegiance to what? Not to an insolvent corporation that's being controlled by a foreign for-profit bank that's bleeding you. Folks, we would have zero of these problems if we stood to the Constitution. There would be no foreign bank. There would be no debt. We would have intrinsic valued money. There wouldn't be a federal government in every state. Do you remember? We read this to you verbatim. The United States government can only be involved in enclaves, districts, and territories, not in the states. But they have changed that, haven't they? Every state now is a district. And you acknowledge it by using a thing like a zip code. I had a very, very interesting conversation with my postmaster general. Why do they have a military term for that? With my postmaster at my local post office. Very nice lady. Very patient with me, I'll say, because she's interested and she wants to learn. But I had some certified mail going out, and she said, "Oh, Tom, you forgot to put the zip codes." And I said, "I don't use zip codes." She says, "It won't get there." I said, "It'll get there right on time. It will not be delayed. It'll be given properly." I said, "In law, when you use zip codes, you are acknowledging that you live in a federal district zone." So she said, "Oh, that's interesting." So I mailed my certified mail, and with return receipt requested. And when I got it back, I showed it to her, and she was shocked to see that there was no delay in the delivery of this certified mail. I have mailed many a postage without using a zip code, just in regular mail, not certified mail, just postage stamp, and off she goes. And there has never been a delay in my mail being delivered. I do not live in a federal district zone. We have got to understand the ploy of language here. Now, I'm sort of running out of time, my friends, and I want to stay on these quotes. When the government fear the people, there is liberty. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny. The strongest reason for the people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is as a last resort to protect themselves against tyranny in government. Thomas Jefferson. Those who beat their swords into plowshares usually end up plowing for those who didn't. Ben Franklin. Let me say that one again. Those who beat their swords into plowshares usually end up plowing for those who didn't. Ben Franklin. Oh, so true. What country can preserve its liberties? What country can preserve its liberties if their rulers are not warned from time to time that their people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them then take arms. Thomas Jefferson. A free people ought not only to be armed and disciplined, but they should have sufficient arms and ammunition to maintain a status of independence from any who might attempt to abuse them, which would include their own government. George Washington. Guard with jealous attention the public liberty. Suspect everyone who approaches that jewel. Unfortunately, nothing will preserve it but downright force. Whenever you give up that force, you are ruined. The great object is that every man be armed. Everyone who is able might have a gun. Patrick Henry. Okay, my friends, I could get into a bunch of more here, but I am unfortunately running out of time. There is some good news on the front, and I want to be sure to cover that, and that's why I'm going to stop here. This is very interesting, though. The school, Sidwell Friends School in Washington, D.C., is hiring more security guards. Now, you may wonder, why am I bringing that up? Why am I bringing that up, my friends? It's because that is the school that President Obama's children go to. I am not talking about separate security guards for the president's children. This school has a long policy of hiring security guards, armed security guards, for this school. Nothing to do with Secret Service. This is just the school's policies. So we go to the help wanted ads and we find, first of all, that this school is hiring security guards, and basically that they must have firearms training and so forth. And then when you do some research on this school that I did, we find out that Sidwell Friends School in Washington, D.C. every day has 11 armed security officers on their staff on the grounds. But your children are not allowed to be protected, and they just announce it and announce it and announce it as a gun-free zone. My friends, we haven't got into the psychotropic drugs that goes on with all these, with Columbine and Virginia Tech and all these schools, all these kids are on these psycho drugs. All right? And we haven't got into that yet. I'm doing more research so I can present this to you. But understand this. Their children are protected with armed security, but yours don't have the right to that? Why do you allow that to go on? Why do you allow that to go on? You should be ashamed of yourself. Okay. I was doing some research on crime. Found out that crime is reduced by about 49% with states that have activated right to carry laws. But I found something very interesting, my friends. In 2011, 496 people were murdered with a hammer or a comparatively blunt object. Would you like to know how many people were murdered with a rifle? The weapon that they're trying to take away from you, because it is a great defense weapon? 323. So in 2011, according to FBI crime statistics, go to fbi.gov/crime statistics, you will see 496 people were murdered with a hammer and 323 were murdered with a rifle. I wonder if that was the same rifle that was taken out of the trunk in Sandy Hook, but yet it was used in a school. And it goes on. 356 people were murdered with shotgun. So 496 people were murdered with a hammer in 2011, according to the FBI, but just 323 were murdered with a rifle, and 356 were murdered with shotgun. Unbelievable. Overall in this nation, my friends, violent crime is down by 24%, murder is down by 28%, robbery is down by 50%, and this is post-carry, basically in the state of Florida, which was this big example of, was violent crime and murder down by 36%. Do you remember when the criminals, they were attacking the cars, all the rental cars? And I am unfortunately not going to have time to get into these gun statistics. I'll have to save that for another show because I want to get into some good news for you. Missouri sheriffs pledge not to enforce Obama gun laws. It appears to me and many Americans that there's a genuine desire on the part of your administration to restrict the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding American citizens in the interest of curbing gun violence in our nation. Any attempt to resist the Second Amendment rights through executive order is unconstitutional and tantamount to an all-out assault on the Constitution. This person, Sheriff Dixon, is telling the president that they will not enforce gun confiscation. And then a Missouri House bill supported by Dixon also. And if you want to look this up, it's Missouri HB 170. They are actually going to pass gun legislation where they are not going to be allowed to confiscate the citizens' guns in Missouri. Josine County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Gil Gilbertson. This is a direct letter to Vice President Obama. As the elected sheriff of this county, I am saddened with the duty as well as as with responsibility to uphold the Constitution and protect those people who place their trust in me to do what is right. I believe in our Constitution and all that it stands for. We, you and I, are sworn to protect and defend the Constitution as required through an oath of office. This same constitutional form of government provides us with the most privileged and envied country in world history. Someone once said, our country who will collapse from within without a shot being fired. No nation in the world can do more damage to the United States than we can inflict upon ourselves. We are keenly aware of just that the accelerated pace in which our central federal government is usurping the Constitution. This lends itself to a much broader discussion, but for the brevity's sake, I remain focused upon the Second and 10th Amendment issues. It is so typical of Big Brother mentality to punish the masses for the heinous crimes committed by a few despicable individuals. The Constitution and Bill of Rights guarantees liberties to people. These documents, as you know, cannot be whisked to the side by regulation or executive order. According to these documents, the executive and judicial branches were to have no lawmaking powers. The question then becomes, how is it executive orders can be enforced as if they were laws? As such, any rule, regulation, or executive order repugnant to the constitutional rights of the citizens of this county will be ignored by this office, nor will this office nor its citizens allow enforcement of unconstitutional activities by federal officers. We refuse to participate or allow our law-abiding citizens to be criminalized through constitutionality repugnant actions by a misguided intentions or politicians of the federal government. Respectfully, with his signature, Gil Gilbertson, Sheriff, Josephine County, Oregon. Collins County Sheriff Terry Box. In light of recent events, I feel to make a public statement on my views on this subject. As Sheriff of Collin County, Texas, I have for 28 years served to protect and keep safe all citizens of our county, recognizing the trust placed in me with this profoundly important responsibility. Unfortunately, the recent surge in numbers of innocent victims who have died at the hands of unstable criminals has promoted politicians in Washington to seek to pass laws that would seriously erode the constitutional rights of innocent and law-abiding citizens. Neither I nor any of my deputies will participate in the enforcement of laws that violate our precious constitutional rights, including the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. As long as I remain Sheriff of Collin County, I will not participate in the actions of misguided politicians who seek to impede our citizens' rights to all of the privileges afforded to us by our Constitution. Respectfully, Terry G. Box, Sheriff, Collin County, Texas. My friends, I do not have time to read the rest of these, but I will tell you that I am excited because I personally have read statements from 16 different sheriffs throughout different counties throughout the country with animations just like this, that they are not going to participate. There was a bill in Wyoming that said that if any federal agencies come into that state to disarm law-abiding citizens, they will be arrested and detained. My friends, that is what being a citizen of the country is about. Understanding your rights, defending your rights, understanding the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, and understanding the history of people that have been disarmed. I had so much more to go on with that. I will have to continue that with another show because unfortunately, my friends, we are out of time. I just want to say to you that you have to get a hold of your county sheriff and ask them, what are your intentions if federal entities enter your designated area to disarm law-abiding, peaceful citizens? We're not going to get results by staying on the couch. And it will cost you nothing but a quarter or a dime, as they used to say, to make a simple phone call or an email or a letter to your sheriff's office, letting them know that you are watching their actions, that you are taking heed to what they are protecting. Let them know that you are paying attention. My friends, I thank you so much for watching our program. We are at a time when we must get active if we are to maintain what little freedoms we have left. As always, we close in reminding you that your government is your responsibility. We thank you for watching.
Got to read between the lines.